CAI, and thank you to Customize Guard Services for sponsoring today's educational session. My name is Liz Fluharty, and I have Kathy Slight here with Vote HOA Now, the industry experts in electronic voting. And we are ourselves former community managers. We've been in business since 2007 when Oregon implemented electronic voting. So we're excited that California is gearing up and on board. So today I'm just going to do a brief legal disclaimer. Any materials shared in this presentation today are strictly designed to enable you to educate yourselves and, of course, seek your attorney, your legal counsel for your association's attorney, just to confirm and make sure you're meeting those requirements. And we'll do our best to guide you and so you can look for the right tools of where to find that information. A little outline of what we'll be going over today. Of course, we're going to go over the Electronic Voting Authority and overview. Where do you look to get that information? Different service level choices that many providers throughout the country have, and just making sure that you're meeting your state statute requirements and picking those service levels. And then we'll go over the resolution and rules that you need in order to have electronic voting for your community and some of those timelines. And then e-voting misconceptions and myths. So that is fun. We'll go over some myths there that people have about e-voting. And then I just want to reiterate, we have an intimate group here today, so please feel free to use the chat if you have questions. Kathy and myself will make sure that we get those answered for you. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy for the legal overview.
All right. Thanks, Liz. Great job on the interview or the introduction. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So the legal overview, this is the least funnest part of the presentation, but the most important really, because we really do have to know where we're getting our authority. Online voting was made legal in California on January 1st, 2025. So welcome. We've been waiting for you for a long time to join us and have the option to share with your community. But this is kind of fun. We just like to always give a shout out to all of the states that do have a state statute. It's funny, if you don't see a state on here, it just means they don't have a state statute. But unlike California, they can pass a resolution or a rule and still use online voting, where before California has had these guidelines from the Davis-Sterling Act, and that's prevented anybody from moving forward. That was bound to the Davis-Sterling Act for using electronic voting. So just kind of a little bit of history about where we came from there. Okay, so I love this slide. It's kind of a fun one, everybody knows, but it's good to remember the hierarchy of documents. And that's, when we're consulting with our clients, when we're helping them and providing assistance, we're looking at that federal level, the state level, city level, recorded map, plan, or plat. When I was a manager years and years ago, did not know that you could find a lot of details on those. And so really important documents, declaration, amendment voting, CC&Rs, articles of incorporation. When did our corporation start, and how long do we have to be an association? The bylaws, of course, which govern the actions of the board, and voting and notices and other things that we're going to find our authority there. And then, the easiest ones, the rules, regulations, and resolutions. So we're glad that California made a rule that you have to just have a rule or a resolution. So that doesn't always mean that you have to spend a lot of money getting an amendment for your documents. Okay, so electronic voting basics, as we know and we've talked about, January 1st, 2025 was when we could start looking at online voting options. Of course, some of the basics are that we have to use a system that uses a website where owners can log in securely to cast votes. And that just means that you're going to be asking those providers, do you have a web-based system? Is it a a phone system? Is it a text system? And what does that mean to that requirement in the state statute? So in most cases, you're going to be looking for something that is a web-based platform. Inclusion in electronic voting can be done via an opt-out system and an opt-in system. Well, here we are trying to figure out what opt-in and opt-out means. We are recommending that every community follow. It's called an opt-out system, but it just really means that everybody is opted in until they let you know that they want to opt out of electronic voting. So those are the people that you're going to send a paper ballot to, that you might have to see at the meeting. All of those ways of voting are still good options. Now, the e-voting site information can be sent to owners through an email link, which comes from that web-based system. They can be posted on a website with the link to the voting site, so they could click on that link, go there and ask for their voting credentials if they didn't receive that email invitation, or there typically might be a QR code. So a couple of different ways. You're going to find that depending on what age group we're in, they're either going to find the invitation, they're going to click on the link, or they're going to use that QR code to get to the community voting site. So lots of easy ways for them to participate. Now, it can be used, online voting, we always think of it, here we are, most of the time we're running elections, but really electronic voting can be used for any membership vote. With the only exception, of course, is for assessment votes. Which still must be in by paper ballot. So if you're running some of those, you still have to look at sending out a paper ballot. You cannot vote electronically. We think we're going to see some of these things change as we move forward and we begin to trust the electronic voting providers, and we're going to add more things to these opportunities to have membership votes where you vote on everything electronically. Now, of course, one of the fun things, and you're unique in this one requirement, is that if you're using electronic voting, if you have a call for candidates period, that due date is over, you send out the electronic ballot or paper ballot with the candidates. It does take away the requirement for any nominations from the floor, even if it says so in your documents. If you've had the call for candidates period and you make it very clear that in order to run for the board, because of the meeting type or style, and because of the state statutes, we're no longer going to take nominations from the floor. So wow, that just cleans up that whole meeting. Liz will agree with me. We talk about nominations from the floor 80% of the time here in the office, and what do we do with them? It's good to plan and have a plan if it comes up, but it's also good to let them know that you won't be taking any nominations from the floor. Unfortunately, you still have this inspector level, or fortunately, it was kind of nice to turn over everything to a third party separation. So the state statute does not eliminate the need for an inspector of elections. So you think, okay, here we've got online voting, we've got the inspector. It just means that the online voting company would work with your predetermined inspector of elections to run that vote. And we're very familiar with those steps to do that. Okay, so a few more items that are really important to know. Of course, that the rules must be modified to add in electronic voting. What do you say? What do you put in those things? Ask your online voting provider for some standard language that they might be able to share with you, because believe me, it's going to come up more than once, and everyone's going to be wanting to help the managers. So it says 90 days before the election. So you really do have to plan early. If your meeting right now is before the end of the year and you haven't started, you might have a little bit of a chance to get in there. But otherwise, we're talking about anything after January 1st right now if you haven't gotten started yet. So 90 days before the election, HOAs must, condos, any type of associations, provide paper ballots to members who opt out. Or people that they do not have an email address for. We're just going to assume that they're all going to need a paper ballot. Now, they can change their mind. They can click on the link. They can scan the QR code. They can go in and vote electronically. So we have to notify them 90 days, but there still may be an opportunity for them to choose their own voting method. Maintain a record of members' voting preference, which could change from year to year. So, in my world, I think to me that means that I'm going to keep that final report with all of the owners who voted electronically. I'm going to assume that they would like to again, and anyone who we have to send a paper ballot to. So hopefully that you're going to see a shift from that electronic voting list growing and the paper list getting smaller and smaller. Now, require electronic voters to provide a valid email address. Well, that would be the only way that it would work if we actually received a valid email address. In electronic voting, they have the ability to register and ask for certain details. Maybe it came to their Yahoo address, but they really want it to go to their Gmail address. So those are some of the questions we're going to get before we get started. And again, the great news, every state wants this, that it does prohibit nominations from the floor in elections conducted electronically. So that really is a huge time saver at a meeting. I'm just going to stop and take a little drink of water and let you think about that.
Yeah, and I can help jump into to the next point. It must be secret, anonymous ballot. So making sure you choose a provider that has that feature in their system and ensuring that it is set up that way. And then electronic ballots are irrevocable. That's a big deal. That you don't have to go back and decide, was the ballot that was mailed in yesterday supersede the one that was, put electronically today. So once the electronic ballot is submitted, it is irrevocable. So making sure you put that language on the ballot so owners know once they cast it, it is said and done there. And then electronic ballots count towards meeting quorum. So you're going to know before you get to that meeting that you have quorum for the meeting.
Mm-hmm. And these are all good points to be thinking about putting in your rule when you're making it. And they're just really simplified for everyone to understand.
And there are some more.
Mm-hmm. So, just a few more requirements of your e-voting system, that it must be able to authenticate the voter identity. For us, that's, of course, the information that we receive, one primary voting email, and that typically is just one representative per lot or unit. They must be able to transmit the secret ballot to ensure vote secrecy. Make sure that you're asking these questions, or you're talking to your current inspector. Maybe you already have one and they're considering adding e-voting to their offerings, and you'll want to know that they're able to meet that secrecy requirement. And for even the inspector has to be protected at a certain level and make sure that that vote is ran with the secret requirement. Now, preventing vote tampering during transmission. So that really is part of that authenticated voter identity and the secret ballot. So make sure that you're just kind of understand what those things are. Also, this is the best thing we've ever given our owners. I remember owners saying they had mailed in their paper ballots and we didn't receive them. When an owner votes electronically, the system must be able to transmit a receipt to them. So once they submit their ballot, they're going to receive a receipt of exactly how they voted, the time, the date, and any other information that needs to be on that receipt. So, better. A lot of my owners never really knew if their paper ballots made it to the meeting or not. And we have this funny joke about meeting quorum 2 weeks after the meeting because of all the mail finally got there and we received it. So, how long do you have to send out paper ballots? In this world today, it seems like it has to be a month, of course. And then it must be able to separate any voter identity from the ballots. And that's really what a secret ballot is. So it's not complicated.
All right. So, Kathy, what trends will shape our path? I know here on this next slide, the Foundation for Community Association Research put together the growth in the number of U.S. community associations and different housing trends, which we thought was pretty impressive. What do you have to say about that, Kathy?
Yeah, yeah, it is impressive, Liz. And we're lucky to have these resources available to us because it really makes us feel like this is an industry, it's growing, we're becoming more recognized. And these associations out there are looking to us to provide this professional service. So, 33.6 of US housing is in community associations. I'll bet you that's even increased since we pulled that stat from 2024. So, interesting. I like that 3.4 billion estimated value of time provided by homeowner board members and committee members. Look at that. That's a huge number. The average is $33.49 per hour of time that they spend in their community without being paid. And we all know, um, the manager, the board members, everybody, they're like a team that's just flowing. But, the managers or the committee members and board members really do have a huge impact on their communities. Anything else you like there on that slide, Liz?
Well, I just think, I mean, look at how many community association elected members and board members and committee members there are. And then also there are a large number of self-managed community associations, which I think is why all of these states are moving towards more of that inspector and third party platform, which is number one, assisting the board and committees of their time, but also keeping that transparency. And so I'm curious to see where these numbers go in the future. But
Mhm.
also, if you're eco-friendly, we did have some fun eco stats. One of them being the most significant, switching 1,000 people from paper ballots to electronic voting can save over 25 pounds of paper. And, e-voting does have the largest carbon footprint per vote cast, which is making lower environmental impact. And most importantly, we're increasing participation without increasing waste and environmental harm. So those are just a few small,
Mhm.
fun facts there.
I always try and picture in my mind how many reams of 500 pages of paper is in 25 pounds of paper. What does that really look like? I think one day we're
Uh,
going to have to put that to the test, Liz.
I think I've seen it. I was an administrative assistant, back in the day, and I was mailing out lots of paper ballots and notices, and yeah, so I definitely know how that looks. And then I would say the future is here. It's online. Of course, we all know even more heightened since 2020, and communities are embracing Zoom. They're embracing using their email. I mean, you can't even get a phone that isn't a smartphone anymore. And the most common misconception we have and we hear all over is we're worried about an older group, seniors. Well, we know they have help. I know my grandpa calls me with his iPhone or his Apple if he has questions on it. And actually, we are seeing that these older age groups, per the Pew Research of 2024, are reporting that 44% are using the internet. I mean, that's huge. Even my grandma, who is, 87, she just got a smartphone a couple years ago and is embracing it. So you also do have your millennials and Gen Ys and Gen Zs moving up. I mean, look, Gen Zs make up 4% of home buyers, and I have children close to that age, and they grew up with technology. They don't know anything different. So definitely, know your audience, know the homeowners, and anything else you want to point out on this slide?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that we do a lot of voting in retirement states, which, the biggest ones I think of course, are Florida and Arizona. And we do find that some of those, lifestyle communities where they're, not 55 and up, but really 70 and up, that we achieve quorum a lot quicker in those communities because we think that they have the time to look at their email, read the information, click on the the links, register, make their selections on the ballot, and submit more time than other working families might have, or our young, millennials and whatnot. We're finding that they might do it late at night and they might do it only on the weekend. And so, really interesting to be on this end of it and see that, gosh, all age groups are really equal in accepting and embracing technology.
Yeah, and if you are worried, then, just making sure when you are looking for providers, looking at their systems and seeing how user-friendly it is. I would be concerned if you yourself couldn't do it, so just definitely checking those areas as well. All
Mhm.
right, now on to the next level, of course,
Mhm.
is service
Mhm.
provider options.
Yeah. And this is really, really important to understand. There are a lot of electronic voting providers out there, and your inspectors are partnering with, some of them, of course. So we like to talk about the service levels. The full service provider is always recommended. It's like hiring your attorney, getting your insurance agent, and trusted partner that you work with all the time. But it is nice if they understand the industry. Maybe they have some prior experience and they're able to understand what you're looking for. Every vote is unique and different, and they're running this vote for a different reason, especially when we get to membership votes and painting schematics and lobby designs and all types of electronic votes that we're seeing out there. That third party can really take kind of make the layer between, which is required. The managers, the board members, the committee members are kind of removed from that process. And the third party provider is typically working with that inspector or that trusted individual or the attorney or whoever is playing that role for you as the inspector. So it's nice that the inspector has the partnership with the third party representative. Now, it's out there. Don't be fooled. It's really not allowed in California, but there is a self service portal or a management company software add on. Now, we always say these are filled with a lot higher risk than the full service providers. We'll typically find that there are people involved in the process that are not allowed to be involved in the process. And it could be a board member, a committee member. It could be out of desperation. Maybe they can't find an inspector. So, a lot of things going on here, and cost, is always a big part of it. But the self-service providers are not allowed and not recommended. Well, and, when I talk about more risk, I do mean that, your homeowner emails are shared with other companies. They might be purchased or sold, or other information leaks out. So be sure to ask those important questions of your inspector or your online voting company if you're going to be interviewing them. What do they do with the owner data? And we'll get into that a little bit more. I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of the service choices.
Yeah, and then just the disclaimer in bold red at the
Mhm.
bottom. I mean, we preach this all day long that free or almost free does mean you are the product. So the names and the emails you are giving those free platforms, as
Addresses, LLCs,
addresses.
yeah,
Yeah.
everything. Okay.
All right.
So
Let's.
here we are. Let's talk about the rules. We know that we need a rule. We know that it has to be done 90 days before we have our election. We are including it and layering, just adding another layer. So we're still going to have the inspector, the voting, and the annual meeting. So still several parties involved that have to be coordinated. So lots of fun thinking about what we're going to put into this role. We recommend, of course, that you be as concise as you can, talking about the types of meetings that you're going to hold. Is it going to be in person? Is it going to be online and virtual only? Or are we going to have a hybrid version? And we may have to have a little tiny set of rules for each one of those, because it could change at any time. Maybe you're always having in person, but gosh, this meeting doesn't require us to meet in person. Let's do an online. So we'll want to understand each one of those types of meetings. And then timing, best to create a time frame rather than specific dates. making sure that you're including that enough time for the call for candidates period. And we typically will see 10 to 20 days or a couple weeks before. But if you've got a community that's larger and you want to really make sure that they understand there's no nominations from the floor, and you might want to give them an additional week to get those candidate forms in. Now, in today's electronic voting, photos, videos, all those fun things can go onto electronic ballots. So really, the owners have this great voting experience, and they get to see their candidates live or a picture of them. I don't know about you, but I always like to, I'm a face person, so I always recognize people by their face. And so it's fun to have those pictures on there. And then, of course, your paragraphs of interest, your forms, all of those you should be able to provide to your full service provider, and they'll be linked on the ballot. Now, we really don't have to talk about this much in California because we know that the manager, the board, or committee members, can they be the inspector? Or they cannot be the inspector. So, what is required of the inspector person? Now, I say this because it doesn't always have to be an inspector of elections. It just has to be a neutral party with no ownership in the association. So, this could be your legal representative, your inspector, your CPA, or a trusted individual that you've worked with for years that the community knows and trusts. They have to be available to answer those owner questions. And that is why you would consider a full service opportunity, is because you are going to get assistance with that, answering those questions. Not many really come up during an electronic vote. I think more questions come up with a paper vote, like, did you receive my ballot, which doesn't happen electronically. And then, of course, that person, the inspector, that level, must provide the ballot and owner information. Look at the ballots, make sure they look good, make sure the names are all in order, they're all spelled correctly, that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and whatnot. And once everybody's smiling and they love the way it looks, we're going to gain those approvals. And then that person is typically also the person that receives that final report, and they take it to the meeting with them to announce the results. Now, you're probably thinking, I think we're going to get into paper here in just a minute. So, yes. Some more details about the rule for you to consider. The quorum needed, are write-ins allowed? Yes to the secret ballot, and what is the time frame? Usually we always see that voting, is open anywhere from 2 weeks and beyond. But it's nice to know that a membership vote could last longer than an election. So those are maybe 2 sections in your rule that you're going to create. The positions, are the term lengths different, and how are those determined? I know I got a lot of associations where we never knew anybody's terms. And so we kind of had to start from the beginning, but it is good to mention that, we have 3 open positions. One's a 3-year, one's a 2-year, and one is a 1-year. So it's good to have that information and know the staggering of the terms in your rule. Paper mailings, they're still required by law, that you still have to place your official notice in the mail. Rather, your inspector or your third-party representative is going to do that. Who are we sending paper ballots to? If you've opted out, you're going to receive a paper ballot. Otherwise, we're going to determine that you're opting in and you're going to vote electronically. Please make sure that you update your email address with management every time you make a change. It ultimately is going to help with sending those paper ballots, paper proxies. You're still going to get asked for some of those old traditional methods of voting, but in most cases, very few and very infrequently, and everyone will use an electronic ballot. Now, what do we do if an owner votes by paper or proxy? The state statute has already taken care of that for us. It says that every electronic vote ballot is irrevocable. So we already know that the electronic ballot will be the winning ballot. So that's the one we're going to count. Everything else we can set aside that we received, but the electronic ballot will prevail. And then don't forget, at the end of your vote, make sure that your voting partner, your inspector, or your company can handle some of those last minute requirements, like owners that are unable to vote because they're delinquent on the day of the meeting, and some of those last minute little things that could get overlooked when you're getting all excited, getting ready for your meeting. So make sure that you're explaining those things and that you know what they are, and they're in your rules so your owners know when they're reading that, gosh, if I haven't paid my assessment by the time we get to the election, my vote isn't going to count.
Now, Kathy, who I think one line we jumped over, who can vote an owner date of record?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so the owner data record, I did skip that. I don't know how, but thank you, Liz. The owner date of record is typically called out in your documents, or it could be in your state statute. And it really applies more to elections than amendment voting, where elections, once you start electronic voting, drop your official notice in the mail, any changes of ownership in your community, those new owners will have to wait till the next voting period. So that is the end date of the owner date of record. So anybody who is an owner as of that date, that voting starts, or we drop the official notice in the mail, is going to be our owner date of record. And so in your rule, you're going to say that, when voting opens is the owner date of record, and there won't be any changes of ownership. Now,
Yeah,
during an amendment vote, we have more time. So we are maybe looking at changes of ownership and those new owners being able to vote. And so just make sure that you understand that process with your inspector of elections.
yeah, and I just wanted to point that out because it's an important role. And I mean, one,
Mhm.
as a former manager, I didn't really even think to look in my document, and look at that owner date of record requirement there. So it's better to have that in place in your rules before, the voting is happening. And then just some additional rule details. Make sure your announcement of results. Do you announce candidate tally or just the winners? So you'll want to make sure, where is that going to be posted? What are you going to share with your owners? And then tie votes. Is a runoff needed, Kathy?
Yeah, this is a fun one. And it happens more frequently now that more people are voting, and we're seeing it happen more and more. So decide in your rule how you are going to handle a tie vote. Maybe it's that everybody votes again. Maybe it's a flip of a coin. I had one association that did rock, paper, scissors, or, maybe one of the candidates will step down. But if it's a tie for second place and I've got three positions on my ballot, I might have a tie for second place and I might kick the third person out. So you really do have to be thinking about, what are we going to do with the tie vote? So be thinking about what works for you and your community and what might be fun, and be sure to include that. And then we always say, a rule is only a rule, a resolution is only a resolution for, this period. And it's good to review it, look at it annually, and make sure that you're adding some of those steps that you missed, or you're removing some of those things that really turned out to be an obstacle for you and you think you can do a little differently. So we always recommend that you review your rules and your resolutions annually. Do we have any questions, Liz?
No, we don't. You're just covering it so
Okay,
well.
I guess so. All right. We'll be thinking of your questions. We're here to answer them for you. Now we're going to go into our misconceptions and myths. This is kind of like our myth buster session that we love.
Yeah, and a lot of these we did cover,
Mhm.
today, especially the older owners want paper technology accessible for older owners. We showed some stats early on that kind of prove that 44% of 80 and older are using technology and embracing it, and those numbers just keep getting larger and larger as time moves on. Lack of all owners' email addresses. Well, you have to
Mhm.
start somewhere. So start with what you have and maybe communicate ahead of time to your homeowners, or do communicate ahead of time and make sure that you're gathering that updated contact information annually, or however you do with your parking assignment or cars, and just a form where you're gathering that information at one time. And then security and safeguarding owner data. What happens with our emails? Kathy, you want to touch on that?
Yes, yeah. We always recommend that you ask your partner, whether it's your inspector or your e-voting company, what they're doing with your owner data. What does the storage look like? What are they keeping? Do those things remain on the voting sites? What is their process? So it's good to be able to understand. And really, we have never had anyone hack into an HOA condo co-op timeshare election. So that's good news. We don't think that they want to, but still, there are people out there that are mining for data, and so we'll want to make sure that we understand the process for that company. And then again, we have it on here, nominations, which are not required in California, which is great. They really gave you some good safeguards in the state statute, which I love, that makes your meetings so easy. And we wish they were that they flowed all across the US, because you have some nice little protections in there. Um, Hybrid meetings, virtually and in person. How should paper be handled? So think about these things. Liz, what did you do when you were a manager?
As far as how paper should be handled,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
so virtually and in person, I mean, what timing?
Yeah,
Um,
well, what I meant was, like, when should paper be due? Like, are electronic
oh
ballots
yeah,
and paper ballots going to be
yeah.
due at the same time? If we've got like a hybrid meeting, we know we've got all kinds of different sources coming at us at one time.
Yeah, so your best rule is, if possible, to have paper ballots and electronic ballots due at the same time. So therefore, you are having all of those results and reports at that one point in time, instead of gathering everything in person, but also making sure, if you are, that your service provider is providing you with those different reports that you would need, as far as who voted electronically and who did not, so you can cross-reference those so you're not duplicating votes for those owners.
Mhm, mhm. And then this next one, this is still going to come up. Some owners are going to call you and they're going to ask for a proxy. We're going to just consider that a piece of paper, and you are going to follow your same process to contact the proxy holder, issue them a paper ballot so that they can vote for the owner. In most cases, if that person has already voted electronically, they will not be able to vote electronically for a proxy holder. So just some things to remember, about proxies. Make them available upon request. Don't put them in your envelopes. Don't send them out. We're trying to limit the use of proxies and have everyone just return a paper ballot or an electronic ballot. Now, what if
Yeah.
someone does, yeah, go vote electronically and by paper? We already know the electronic vote is irrevocable. Irrevocable. It doesn't matter when they submit it.
Right.
Agreed,
And
Liz? Yeah,
we touched on that a lot.
yeah.
And then what if no one has come forward to be a candidate? Are you going to have a write-in space? Are you going to offer write-ins on your electronic ballot and your paper ballot? So making sure that those systems that you're selecting have those possible features open. We have seen many do that, where they run their ballot for a quorum option and they allow the write-in as well. And then secret, really secret, we touched on that as well, making
Yeah.
sure your service provider, in fact, does keep the system secret to meet that state statute requirements. Um,
Well, and one other thing, go back just
mhm.
to the one last slide, Liz, just for a sec. What if no one comes forward to be a candidate? Liz had mentioned the write-in spaces. This still uh, will allow you to receive write-ins all the way through the nomination period and voting period. You do not have to open up nominations from the floor. So that still is no nominations from the floor, just to be very clear about that requirement. Okay, here we go. These are some typical things that we always see. We need a signature on the ballot and envelope. Yes, in any secrecy vote, this is required. Ask your provider how they're going to handle that and how they're going to collect those signatures and what they're going to do with them. Maybe they're collecting a DocuSign or something that you really don't want your actual signature just hanging out there, but there are other ways to authenticate a voter, using par values, percentage, one vote per lot or unit. These are all pretty standard. We don't see a lot of cumulative voting, but it's out there in a few documents, and a lot of older ones on the East Coast. But it's here, California does have a lot of HOAs. In fact, the most in the US. So, we might find ourselves a fun set of documents out there that says something funny about that type of thing. And then additional costs. These are the concerns, that we've always had with paper voting. Of course, the price to reconvene meetings goes away if you're reaching quorum. Before you get to the meeting, this is going to take care of any reconvene meetings. Going to cut down on your mailers, notices, envelopes, all of that is money saving. And remember, 1,000 voters, 25 pounds of paper. And the extra, no more door-to-door knocking for the managers, the board members. I always say, why did it always happen that the manager had to run around and knock on doors to get proxies to, reach quorum? And even sometimes still we were unsuccessful. So it really does help with taking away all of those situations or reducing them from being even in place.
Yeah, and I don't know how high California has with that, the reconvene meetings, but when we were managers in Oregon, we sure had a challenge getting quorum, and those reconvene meetings is time for the committees, the board members, the manager. So really, it's just a huge saving at least.
Yeah. And maybe the location that you're renting to.
Yeah,
Not
and
all of
you
us
know,
have a clubhouse or a place where members can meet.
yeah, and at the end of the day, as an e-voting provider in this industry, there are many great electronic voting and third-party inspectors, especially in California, that you can select from, and just making sure that the end result is a trusted system that is not only easy for owners to vote, but authenticate those results and make sure that they're meeting your state statute requirements. No miscounted paper ballots, finding a system that's trusted and that is tallying those in real time. You're going to see a much higher participation rate. I mean, I know that we're achieving 96% successfully for reaching quorum, and we pride ourselves on that. So you are going to see that you're going to reach owners that are traveling, that aren't home, and that have a second home even. With that slow of paper mail, you're going to definitely see an increase there. And you're gonna, like we've said a million times, but it's important to us, especially as we were managers and in your shoes, board members, achieving quorum and also having that official duly elected board with a normal rotation of terms and not having that annual meeting that keeps having to be reconvened. You're going to find that duly elected board you don't have to keep appointing. And most importantly, the board and the manager are going to look like superheroes and no more confusing proxies.
Well, and that duly elected board reaching quorum, it's becoming more and more important in this
Yeah.
industry. Insurance professionals, if you need a loan from a bank, if you're doing a big project and you need the board to represent you, or you have a lawsuit, having a duly elected board that's been elected by the members is the best position to be in. So we always recommend that we try and reach quorum so we can have that duly elected board members to represent us all year long, because even the education, everything is becoming more strict for them also. And so it's just nice to know that their policies, their insurance policy and whatnot, are going to cover them for making decisions in their community.